going to be off the shoulder. And as I anticipated, the recoil's not nearly so noticeable standing. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Suburban Rifleman. Today I want to take a look at a couple of Marlin lever-action carbines. I've had this one for about 15 years or so, I guess, and I just purchased this one a few weeks ago, so this will be my first time shooting it. Both of these rifles were essentially brand new when I bought them, but they were both made in 1983, according to the serial numbers. They're separated by just a few thousand serial numbers. It's very likely that these two rifles could have been on the factory floor at the exact same time. And this one is certainly not in brand new condition anymore. This one really is. I just detail stripped it just a few days ago and cleaned all of the preservative oil that was put on by the manufacturer, most of which had polymerized into a sort of varnish inside. The action on this was very sticky, and there was still a lot of manufacturing debris inside it. As far as I know, it's never been fired other than having been proof fired at the factory. So I don't really want to get too far off in the weeds here. I could probably sit here and talk about these rifles for an hour, but nobody wants to hear me do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and shoot them. My old one is in 30-30. These are model 336s, by the way, 336C, I believe. 336CS, so these are the carbine models. 20-inch barrels. S indicates that they have the crossbolt safety. I know the crossbolt safety is a very contentious issue with a lot of people. It doesn't bother me at all, and furthermore, I actually like it. I don't use it. I generally just use the half cock notch on the hammer when I'm carrying the rifle or hunting with the rifle. But I do find that these crossbolt safeties are nice if you have cold, wet hands, which is often the case when you're out hunting in the wintertime, and you want to decock the rifle. I will put the crossbolt safety on, pull the trigger, safely decock the hammer down to the half cock notch, and then simply click the safety off. I think it's a nice feature to have there. There are, I know, retrofit kits where you can delete the crossbolt safety. A lot of people really hate these things, but I think it's actually a nice addition to the rifle, and I certainly would not mess with them on mine, although your rifles are to do with as you wish, and I don't criticize somebody else for doing it, but I'm going to leave mine intact. So, as I said, I've had this one for about 15 years. It's a 30-30. I just got this one recently, and it's virtually identical. They're both model 336CSs, but this one is chambered in the 35 Remington. So these two cartridges are ballistically, on paper at least, very, very similar. They're both medium range, medium game cartridges. I don't need to go into too much depth here. There's so much, these are so familiar, and there's so much other information out there. Between these two cartridges, I can't imagine how many deer of pretty much every species, and black bear, and even larger species like moose and grizzly bears have been harvested with each of these cartridges over the last 120 years or so. Of course, the 30-30 came out in conjunction with the Winchester model 1894. I think the cartridge itself was introduced in 1895. The 35 Remington, which is a rimless cartridge and looks a lot more modern than the 30-30, actually only post-dates it by about 11 years. I think the 35 Remington came out in 1906, and it's not ever been quite as popular as the 30-30. Certainly not on a nationwide basis, but there are certain areas of the country and also in Canada where the .35 Remington is immensely popular. It's very popular in Pennsylvania. Where I live, it's popular here in Maine, actually all throughout New England. And although they're ballistically similar on paper, the .35 Remington, due to the slightly heavier bullets, the average bullet weight of the .35 Remington is about 20 grains heavier than the average bullet weight of the .30-30, and also the larger diameter, so the larger frontal area of the bullet gives it a significant power advantage when you're dealing with heavier types of game. Now, the .30-30 does generally have a higher sectional density because of the smaller diameter, and it's shooting about 100 to 200 feet per second faster on average than the .35 Remington, so it does have a somewhat flatter trajectory. Neither of these would be considered a long-range cartridge. They're both maybe 150 yards tops for ethical use on game, but definitely at short range with a heavier animal, I would probably prefer the .35 Remington, but I don't know. I've never actually shot this rifle, so without any further ado, let's start shooting these two rifles. Alright, so we're going to start off with the .30-30. Again, I've had this rifle about 15 years. I've used it quite a bit. My dad had it for a number of years, and he used it a bit. The only significant difference between the .30-30 and the .35 is that when I first got this rifle about 15 years ago, I fitted a Williams 5D receiver aperture sight to the rear, and I'm a big proponent of aperture sights in general. I bought into the whole philosophy, and it's I mean, mathematically quantifiable that you know, a longer sighting radius is going to equate to a more precise aim when you're shooting the rifle. But I've actually left the original semi-buckhorn sight on the .35 Remington. First of all, I've only had it a couple of weeks. I haven't really had time to do much to the .35, but I also am kind of interested to see. This isn't an accuracy experiment or anything. We're just shooting at a 100-yard gong here, and I haven't even sighted this rifle in. But I'm interested to see just my own shooting impressions of how I feel about the factory sight as opposed to this aperture sight. I've used the factory sights in the past, but it's been quite a long time. I have a fairly much experience with this. So we're going to go ahead and shoot this first, and then shoot the .35 Remington. Both of these have, I think, a 5-round tubular magazine, but I'm just going to load 3 to get started. Smooth as butter. That seemed quite a bit high.
I think it was high.
Still high. Man, I think I need to reset this. Still high. So those were fairly standard 170 grain loads out of the Marlin .30-30. As expected, very light recoil. I wasn't hitting the gong. Looks like I have this sighted in for something over 100 yards, which is unusual. But now we'll give the .35 Remington a shot. I'm interested to see what the difference in recoil is. These are 200 grain factory bullets, which is pretty much the standard load for .35 Remington. Significant, recoil is significantly different. Recoil is significantly different. Not brutal, but it's there. That was a little to the right.
I think it's to the left, but I'm not sure.
Wow. Well, I will tell you, 35 Remington, if I was starting a 12-year-old kid shooting a lever action rifle for deer season, and I think these make excellent choices for that, I would definitely go with the 30-30. I was not anticipating such severe recoil. I mean, not severe, but it's much more significant. Now, this is Remington ammo. I have some other factory loads here. These are, I believe, Federal. So let's try a couple of these Federal loads and see what those feel like. I actually kind of do like this semi-buckhorn rear sight. I'm developing quite an astigmatism, but I'm not really having much trouble getting an acceptable sight picture with this semi-buckhorn rear. And one thing I love about these rifles is they're extremely ergonomic, at least for me. Now, I know ergonomics are very subjective. You know, I'm built a certain way, you're probably built a different way, but this rifle, when I put it up, if I even put it up with my eyes closed, when I open my eyes, I'm right on the sights. So I'm kind of liking this factory sight. Now, we're not doing any serious accuracy testing today. I would be more than willing to do that in the future if anyone's interested. But just my personal impression, although the aperture sight is supposed to be more intuitive, I'm actually kind of feeling like this is more intuitive for me. So let's see what this Federal ammo is like in the recoil department. Pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. Now these are 200 grain loads from both manufacturers. There are 180 grain loads for the 35 Remington, although finding any 35 Remington ammunition nowadays is getting to be pretty tricky. But I'm assuming that the 180 grain load would probably be a little bit closer to the 30-30 than this is. But these are pretty significant recoil. Not like a 45-70, but actually sharper than the 45-70. The 45-70 is more of a big push. This is a thump. Still shooting off to the left. I would really like to hit that gong. I don't know where that one hit.
No.
I didn't even see any splash.
Barrel's fairly warm.
Oh, okay. Well, it should be. We just ran 6 fairly heavy loads through it. So now the old timer is going to take a couple of shots here. 82 years old. He's not afraid of the recoil.
There is a round chambered.
There certainly is.
Stout.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I wouldn't say it was unpleasant, but it's less pleasant than the 30-30.
I hit the gong, I think. Did I?
Oh, I didn't see. I wasn't watching. I was watching you. We'll listen to the video and see if we can hear it ringing.
I would characterize it as stiff, not extremely unpleasant, but noticeably stiff.
I would say it was confidence-inspiring, though. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem going up against a large black bear with a 30-30, but I would say that I would feel more confident with the 35 in my hand. So we noticed a fairly significant difference in recoil off the bench I just want to take a few shots, first with the 30-30 and then with the 35 offhand, to see if I notice as significant a difference in recoil. So 30-30 first. So, shooting standing off the shoulder, recoil on the 30-30 is virtually non-existent. Well, certainly not significant anyway. Now we'll try the 35 Remington. Because ultimately it comes down to standing shooting. These are both medium range, medium game cartridges. These are woods guns. They're meant for walking, stalking, hunting. So most of your shooting in the field is going to be off the shoulder. And as I anticipated, the recoil's not nearly so noticeable standing. All right, so those are my two Marlin 336 CSs. No surprises from the 30-30. I know how that shoots. I've had it for quite a few years at this point. And I know how that sight works. I actually think I kind of like the factory rear sight on the 35. When I bought this rifle, my intention was to immediately upgrade it to a receiver-mounted peep sight. Maybe not a Williams 5D, but maybe one of the other newer ones that are very popular. But for the time being, I'm inclined to leave this sight on here. I want to do some actual accuracy testing where we're shooting at paper and get some ideas of real group sizes before I make any significant changes. But after we discussed these loads, I was under the impression this was factory ammo. I got it from a very close friend of mine. We actually ended up with two split case necks in the federal loads, and I am suspicious about the origin of this ammo. So it may or may not be factory ammo. So maybe actual factory ammo isn't quite as stout as this was, but there was a definite significant difference between shooting the 30-30 and the 35. Less so when we shot offhand, but definitely very noticeable on the bench. But really, either of these rifles, Marlin lever actions in general are kind of my favorite rifles. I wouldn't say that they're the most accurate. Although if you watch channels like Sagebrush Long Shots here on YouTube, you can see some guys doing some pretty amazing long-range shooting with Marlin lever actions and other lever actions and other 19th century rifle designs. So in general, they're not the most accurate, but they tend to be quite accurate. They're very robust. They're very pleasing to the eye. They're, aesthetically pleasing to all the senses. They sound good. They're just really cool rifles. And these two 336s are virtual twins, made the same year. The only real physical differences between that rifle and this rifle are obviously the barrel, because this has a 35 caliber bore and a 35 Remington chamber, and also the bolt face. The bolt face on this rifle is completely enclosed because the 35 Remington is a rimless cartridge, and the bolt face on the 30-30 version is only partially enclosed to account for the rimmed cartridge. But just really cool rifles. They're kind of my favorite rifles. I don't know that they do any one thing absolutely best, but in my opinion, when I think about the criteria that I use to come up with what's my favorite rifle, ultimately it doesn't come down to accuracy or the trigger or lightweight or whatever sort of very quantifiable factor that you can use to evaluate a rifle. What it comes down to is, what rifle would I most like to spend the day in the woods with? And without a doubt, I have more pleasant memories of walking through the woods with a Marlin 336 than any other rifle. And that's why they're my favorite. So, I hope somebody out there enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel. It goes a long way to help keep me here on the tube. If you're already a subscriber, click the little bell icon down below. That'll allow you to receive notifications when I post new content to the channel. Like, share, tell your friends. All those things go a long way to help me out. And when I post my next video, I hope to see each of you here then. Later, guys.